The final domain we have here is the business environment domain, which accounts for 8% of the overall PMP exam content. And this domain focuses on how project management is influenced by the organizational, environmental, and business sectors or factors. This domain, you will be expected to understand the compliance, the regulations, and legal requirements. Also, the organizational culture and structure, as well as the project impact on the business perspective, stakeholder relationships and engagement, and change management. And by understanding these elements, you will be better equipped to handle how external and internal business factors affect the project management decisions and outcomes. It's all about aligning the project with business goals and ensuring the project success contributes to the broader objectives of the organization. And to start with, the first task we have here is the business environment. It's plan and manage the project compliance. The PMP exam evaluates your ability to ensure the project compliance with the regulatory, legal, and organizational standards. Non-compliance can lead to legal liabilities or penalties, financial penalties, reputational damage, or sometimes project failure. Making compliance management is a critical responsibility of the project manager. And to ensure having, let's say, having a well planned and managed project compliance, we discuss the first point here is to confirm the project compliance requirements. And here the exam may test your ability on how to identify and confirm the compliance obligations related, for example, to the regulatory compliance, for example, the GDPR for data privacy, or OHA for the workplace safety. Some also other standards like the industry specific standards like the ISO or PMI Code of Ethics in terms of project management, the contractual obligation as well, like the vendor agreements, the service level agreement, or which is the SLAs. So expect scenarios based questions where you must determine the correct compliance requirement based on the project characteristics. The next key topic here under this task is to classify compliance categories. Compliance requirements fall into various categories, including mandatory, such as legal or, let's say, regulatory requirements, which we consider them as mandatory, which is government imposed laws and industry specific standards. Next, you have the best practices and policies. And these best practices and policies, it comes like the organizational policies, the ethical guidelines, and process improvement frameworks. The exam may here require you to differentiate between the compliance categories and determine their impact on the project execution. The third step here we have is to, or the third topic here we have to cover is to determine the potential threats to compliance. You may be asked to identify risks that could cause non-compliance, such as lack of adherence to safety protocols or insufficient data security measures leading to regulatory violations. Also, failure to meet the environmental impact requirements. So, expect questions that may test your ability to conduct risk assessment and to determine the severity of the compliance threats. The fourth topic here we have is by when we talked about using methods to support the compliance. We say that project managers must implement proactive measures to ensure the compliance, such as audits and inspection during the quality control, managing the quality, also to ensure the compliance with these adherence to these regulations, also training programs to educate the team members on compliance obligations, as well as compliance checklists, which is integrated into project workflows. You may encounter situational questions at your PMP exam where you need to choose the most effective compliance monitoring method, whether it's a compliance checklist, whether it's a training program, whether it's an audit or an inspection. So you need to understand based on the scenario question, is that you can decide, let's say, which compliance monitoring method you can use. Next, you need to analyze the consequences of non-compliance. Failure to comply can lead, for example, to legal penalties and fines, project shutdowns, or contract terminations, sometimes reputational damages and stakeholder dissatisfaction. Exam questions analyzing consequences of non-compliance will present scenarios where a project is at risk of non-compliance. You must evaluate, let's say, the potential impact in terms of penalties or contract terminations or, let's say, reputational damage. Next, we have you need to determine the approach and action to address the non-compliance or the compliance needs. To mitigate compliance risks, you may need to engage legal and compliance expert to assess the regulatory requirements. Remember when we talked about implement risk management strategies like contingency plans for non-compliance risks. Finally, you can modify the project plans to align with the updated compliance regulations. So remember, the exam here will test your ability to prioritize the actions that addresses the compliance gaps effectively. So think on these mitigation compliance actions that you're going to take to comply with these risks. You need to think in case if it's a legal issue and then who you have to involve, like the legal and compliance experts to assist you understanding these regulatory requirements. In terms of contingency plans, we say that you need to set, let's say, a contingency reserve for the budget, for the time, for the schedule of the project. And then you need also to, as we discussed, that we have to cover, let's say, these changes and adapt them to the project plans and to align them with the updated compliance regulations. Finally, we have the extent of which project is compliance. And measure the level of compliance of your project. Monitoring compliance involve regular compliance audits and reports, tracking key compliance metrics and indicators, also addressing deviations through the corrective actions. Here you may be asked on this topic on how to interpret a compliance data or to determine whether a project meets the regulatory and organizational standards. And the final exam here is we say that the PMP exam integrates the compliance management with risk, government, and stakeholder engagement. So be prepared to answer questions on regulatory requirements, compliance risks, monitoring techniques, and corrective actions. The understanding will framework like the ISO, the GDPR, the PMI Code of Ethics will help you answer the compliance related questions accurately. The second task we have under the business environment is to evaluate and deliver the project benefit and value. PMP exam assesses your ability to ensure that the project delivers a business value that benefit realization continues beyond the project completion. Project managers must track expected versus actual benefit to ensure ownership for benefit realization and communicate value to stakeholders. The first key is to investigate that benefit are identified. The exam here will test your ability to confirm the project benefits are clearly defined and align with the business objectives. And this might include like you need to understand the benefit categories, like maybe you have a financial benefit, financial ROI, or operational efficiency, improving the operational efficiency, Also, maybe the satisfaction of the customers. The next, let's say, we have here is finding a key performance indicators, just KPIs, to measure the benefit realization. Also, ensuring the benefits are documented in the business case and linked also to to project deliverables. So expect scenario-based questions where you must validate project is aligned with the strategic business goals. The next we have is document agreement on ownership or ongoing benefit realization. So benefit realization extend beyond the project closure, finding a clear ownership. The exam here may assess your ability to assign the accountability to business unit or operational teams for post-project benefit tracking. Also will assess your ability to ensure the stakeholders acknowledge their role in sustaining the benefits, as well as defining the transition plan, maintain the benefit after the project completion. So expect questions that may test your understanding of who is responsible for tracking and maintaining the benefits post the project. Next we have here is to verify measurement system in place to track the benefits. Effective benefit realization requires measurement, and the exam may require you to confirm that tools, dashboards, or reports exist to track KPI. Also, the exam may need you to know how to ensure the stakeholders can monitor the performance metric after the project closure, and finally validate the measurement methods aligns with the organization reporting standards. So you might be asked to identify, for example, gaps in benefit tracking and recommend corrective actions. Next topic we have here is to evaluate delivery options to demonstrate a value. The exam here at this topic will may present scenarios requiring you to assess whether the project is delivering expected value or not, and this includes, like for example, comparing different implementation approach, for example, the phased or versus big bang, implementation approach. Also, optimizing project scope and resources to enhance the value delivery, as well as using feedback loops such as execution for improved benefit realization. So expect situational questions where you must select the best approach to maximize the value. Finally, here you need to appraise the stakeholders of value gain progress. The project managers must communicate the value realization throughout the project, and the exam here may test your ability as a project manager to provide a benefit realization reports to stakeholders. Also, use storytelling and data visualization to showcase the project value, as well as adjusting the project strategy based on the stakeholders, let's say, feedback. May be asked to determine at the PMP exam on how best to keep the stakeholder informed of value realization progress. And the final exam tip here on the benefit realization, evaluating and say deliver the business project benefit and value. We talked about the let's say the benefit management plan with its integration with the stakeholder engagement, the project governance, and monitoring and controlling processes. So be prepared for questions on measuring and tracking benefits, assigning ownership, and demonstrating value delivery. And so understanding the benefit realization frameworks, which is there in the PMI benefit realization management, will help you answer these questions effectively. And the third task we have here under the business environment domain is evaluate and address external business environment changes for impact on scope. So the PMP exam will here evaluate your ability to monitor external business factors that may affect the project scope and requires adjustment. Also, maybe changes in laws or market trends, sometimes technology or economic conditions can impact the project deliverables, budget, and timelines. Project managers must be, let's say, proactively assessing these changes, adjusting the scope accordingly, communicate necessary modification to stakeholders. And to cover this point, the first topic here we're gonna discuss is to survey changes to external business environment. The exam will test your ability to identify and track external influences that can affect the project execution. This includes the regulatory changes such as the new compliance laws affecting the project requirements or technological advancement like the introduction of AI, automation, new industry standards. Also, the geopolitical and economical factors like the supply chain disruptions, inflation, policy shifts. Finally, also you need to consider these external influences like the market trends and competition, which causes a shift in customer demand or industry best practices. You might encounter scenario-based questions where a regulatory or technological change affects the project, requiring you as a project manager to determine its impact. The next step here we have is to assess and prioritize impact on project scope or backlog in case if it's an agile, let's say, project based on external changes. Not all external changes requires an immediate action. The PMP exam may test your ability here to analyze the severity and urgency of external changes, also to prioritize the impact on project scope or backlog, budget, or schedule, as well as might be tested at using the risk management techniques to assess the likelihood or the consequences of these changes. Expect questions that requires you to evaluate the significance of external influences and decide how to adjust the project accordingly. The next step here is to recommend options for scope backlog changes. When an external factors make it a very necessary change, so project managers must determine the best response. And the exam here may test your ability to adjust the scope, cost, schedule, and accommodate the external shifts. Also, recommending the trade offs like reducing the non critical features to maintain the schedule, as well as proposing a change management strategies in case if it's a predictive or waterfall project approach to handle the modifications effectively. And the situation of these questions or the situation of this question at the PMP exam may present a real world scenario where an external factor affects the project, requiring you as a project manager to recommend the most appropriate course of action. Finally, we need to continually review the external business environment for impact on project scope or backlog. The PMP exam emphasizes the continuous monitoring on external risks. You may be tested on using environment scans like SWOT analysis to monitor the changes, also engaging the stakeholders proactively to anticipate external disruptions. Finally, like let's say, incorporating the flexibility to the project planning to respond to evolving external conditions. So remember that you will be needing to demonstrate how to integrate ongoing external environment analysis into the project governance. And the final exam tip here we have talked about that PMP exam will integrate the risk management, change management, stakeholder engagement when addressing external business environment factors. So be prepared for questions on analyzing external risks or adjusting the project scope and recommending appropriate responses. Understanding tools like SWOT, impact assessment will help you answer these questions effectively.